Are you guys doing okay this morning? Yeah, good. Good morning. Great to see you all today. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 14. So if you have a copy of the scriptures that you bring with you, if you have an app on your phone that you use to read the Bible, you can go there with me today. We're in the Awaken Houston series, as Glenn said. And our theme, so we're walking through this acrostic of walking. Okay, so like we're prayer walking together. And today is the L, launch out by faith. Launch out by faith. That's going to be our theme this morning. And as you turn there to Matthew 14, I was just thinking about that phrase, to launch out by faith. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but anytime that I've taken a faith step, what I typically encounter is fear. And maybe you've experienced that before, where you step out in faith, you do something that you think God is calling you to do or leading you to do, and you get there and you're like, why am I afraid? I know God said to do this. My very first assignment, whenever I was invited onto full-time staff way back in 2001 at a church, in fact, the church that I'm going to be returning to in Wimberley, they invited me on a staff in 2001. I went to my first staff meeting. I was a college pastor and kind of one of the several worship pastors there. I get there and they said, hey, we got a report that one of the young men that's a part of our ministry, our college ministry, has been verbally abusive to his girlfriend who's also in our college ministry. I'm like, oh man, that's terrible. Like, that's not at all what I thought I was stepping into when I stepped into ministry. So we're having this conversation, and then they look at me and they say, Chris, can you go meet with him? And just in that moment, I had that fear of what? You want me to invite him out to lunch and then be like, why are you being verbally abusive with your girlfriend? That's what they wanted me to do. Okay, so welcome to ministry, day one. Here, big faith step. We're going to serve Jesus. Now I'm taking guys out to coffee and confronting them. And I experienced fear. And I wish I could say that that's an anomaly or a fluke when it comes to following Jesus, but it's actually really normal. That anytime that we make a step of faith, we launch out by faith, we typically are going to encounter resistance. We're going to encounter fear. We're going to encounter our own insecurities. We're going to feel like, man, this is shaky. Okay, and we're going to see this in the life of the disciples today in Matthew chapter 14. I'm going to start in verse 22. This is a famous story. I almost don't even need to read it because you probably know this story by heart. And here's what it says. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side. While he dismissed the crowds, after dismissing the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone. And meanwhile, the boat was already some distance from land, battered by the waves, because the wind was against them. Jesus came toward them walking on the sea very early in the morning. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them, have courage. It is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter answered him, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water, and he came toward Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshiped him and said, truly you are the Son of God. This is God's word. So we have this incredible story. The background of the story is that they've just fed the 5,000. And you know that they counted the head of the household, the men, 5,000 men. So there's probably more like 15,000 people. So that's a massive number. They feed them with just one small meal, and Jesus multiplies the food, right? And so these guys have just seen incredible, mind-blowing things with Jesus. And then it says that Jesus, he forced them right? He says that he made them get into the boat. And that Greek word, it implies to drive or to compel them, right? It's like he's forcing them to go. And I kind of think of parents when your kids are younger and it's bedtime, right? And you have to force them to go to bed, right? You're compelling them, go to bed now. Mom and dad need some like mom and dad time, like y'all go to bed, right? Jesus has just been in the crowds. He's got to be tired. And he's going to go by himself alone to pray on the mountain. He needs some alone time. We know about that, parents. And while he has forced them into the boat, they head out into what would be a very typical kind of storm, because this Sea of Galilee, it's about, almost 700 feet below sea level. So right now we're standing at like 90 feet above sea level. So imagine 700 feet down, surrounded by mountains and hills. It's like this bowl, and when these winds come, it just causes the waters to be very rough and choppy, and the waves are beating against these guys. And I was thinking about that Jesus, he knows all things. He's omniscient. He's God in flesh, right? Jesus knows the end from the beginning. He knows what's going to happen. He knows exactly what's going to happen when these guys get into the boat, and yet Jesus forces these guys to get into the boat. It's almost like the storm was a setup for Jesus to reveal himself in their life. And here's the thing. They're doing exactly what Jesus told them to do, and it gets really, really difficult. See, the first thing I want to point out from this is that obeying Jesus is always the best thing, but it's often the hardest thing to do. It's always the best thing, but it's often the hardest thing to do. They're going exactly where he said to go and exactly when he told them to go there. And it says that they were battered by the wind and the waves. Now, I'm imagining that these guys are a little bit tired too, because they've been out there with Jesus, and they're serving the crowds, and they're picking up the leftovers, and they're doing all these things, and then he compels them into this boat, into a storm, and they are being resisted, right? He leads them into a storm. And see, there's this kind of idea that we can have that if we're doing the right thing, if we're doing what God told us to do, if we're obeying Jesus, then things ought to be pretty easy for us, right? And if things aren't easy for us, then we're like, are we doing the right thing? Like, am I really doing what God said to do? Like, why is it so hard for us? I think it's important for us to see this in the story because we have all those feelings, especially when it comes to launching out by faith, right? We need to know that sometimes Jesus will lead us into a storm. And he didn't promise an easy way, he promised an easy yoke. And not every storm is the result of obeying Jesus, right? There are some storms that are our making, right? When we have, this sin pattern in our life maybe, we kind of keep that going, and then all of a sudden the world falls apart, right? Or you get exposed, or someone finds out, or your spouse, or whatever, and it's like now you have a real storm, and that storm was not like Jesus made. That was you made. So not every storm is his doing, but we can trust that he's doing something in every storm of our life. Jesus is at work. And then in verses 25 through 26, this is so miraculous, and yet it's kind of funny to me. And talk about fear. It says that Jesus came toward them walking on the sea very early in the morning. This would have been between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So just imagine they served all day. They, dispersed the food, picked it up. I'm sure they shook all the hands and and hugged all the people and prayed for people. I mean, it was a full day of ministry, and then they're compelled by their leader to get into a boat, and they're going to row for about 9 hours against the waves. That is a long, long day. And then Jesus finishes his sweet prayer time with the Father, and he just strolls up to him on the water, and they freak out, right? When the disciples saw him, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. And Jesus scares the blank out of them, okay? Right? When my kids were small, like we would say, okay, everybody go get ready for bed. And they would start brushing their teeth and doing their thing. And then whoever finished first would go behind the bedroom door and hide and wait for the next kid to come through. And they'd be like, whoa, right? Trying to scare their brother. And Jesus, I just wonder if the sense of humor of Jesus is kind of that place, like, watch this. He's going to roll up on them. They're like, oh. Scares the blank out of them. I mean, I'm imagining the adrenaline shock. They think it's a spirit. Right, some kind of ghost, because Jesus is obviously defying the laws of physics, right? He's walking on water and like, that's not humanly possible. It must be a ghost. It must be a spirit. And what's so amazing about this moment is that Jesus, and he's doing this throughout his entire ministry, he's demonstrating his lordship over creation, over all created things. And every time he takes a step, that water upholds him. I mean, that's crazy. It's not like all the water turned into like concrete. You know, it's like just wherever he would step, it's like that water would uphold him where like he could drop a stone right there and it would splash right next to him. Like it's amazing to me. And he must have been far enough away that they couldn't make out his face. Right, but close enough to hear him call out. So, you know, I'm imagining that it is kind of like blurry, right? Because you've got all the water blowing in your face, and they see him walking towards them, and they're like, "What is it? It's a ghost," right? And then they call out, or he calls out to them, and he says this: "Have courage. Have courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Have courage." That word courage, or in the original language, it's to have confidence. Have confidence. That it is I, it's actually like a translation of I am. Like Moses when he says, like, who do I tell the people sent me? And then he says, tell him that I am sent you. Like it's like, have confidence, I am. It's me. Don't be afraid. Don't be terrified. Don't be scared away. Don't be seized with alarm. And here's the second thing I just want to point out from this passage is that when fear rises and everything feels out of control, remember that we serve the one who rules over everything. I mean, when life feels out of control, and I know that happens to you, like there's moments, there are days, sometimes there are full seasons of your life where it's like this is out of control. Like my fear is off the charts, my anxiety, like I feel it stirring inside of me, right? You feel it rising inside of you because of your family or your finances or your kids or the things that are happening around your life, or maybe just, you know, all the economy or whatever it is for you. It's like you feel the stirring, the anxiety rising inside of you. And everything feels out of control. And it's just really helpful to know that you serve the one who can make the water uphold him wherever he takes a step. Like he literally has that much control over everything. He has rule and domain over all created things. And he says to him, have courage. That word courage, it's mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. It's mental or moral strength, right? To withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. My favorite definition comes from the late and great John Wayne. And anytime I can quote John Wayne in the sermon, I just got to take the opportunity, okay? So just bear with me. I love this quote. Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyways. And when we launch out by faith, we're going to experience fear. And Jesus says to us in the midst of that stepping out, have courage. I am. I've had lots of opportunities for fear, not just that day one of church employment, but talk about planting a church. When God called me to plant a church called Renaissance in Richmond, Texas, and immediately I'm like, oh, that sounds like difficult, God. Like, really? And it's like, yes. And so I'm like, okay. And we get all excited, and we're gonna plant a church, and we're gonna get some friends together. We had Zach and April and Glenn, and we had the Nances, and people were like, yeah, let's go, let's do this, let's plant this church. And then we start getting into like, well, who's gonna come? I don't know. We're just going to have to tell everybody we know. We're going to put some stuff on Instagram, right? And we just start gathering friends, and then we start the church, and then guess what I feel in the middle of all that? More fear. More like, can I do this? Like, this is a lot. And every time we launch out in faith, friends, we feel it. Now, even as I'm being sent out to Wimberley, right? And I know that God's calling me to do it. And I know his voice is leading me to do it. And yet this week, I start pricing out health insurance for my family in the transition. Have you priced out health insurance lately? It is stupid expensive. It scared me. I'm like, really, God? Are you sure? But every time we launch out in faith, we're going to be met with these things. And so if you're waiting to not have fear to take a faith step, I just want to tell you, you're never going to take the faith step. You'll be waiting forever because there's always going to be a part of us whenever we feel led towards something that we're going to feel afraid. We're going to feel uncertainty. We're going to feel lost. We're going to feel all those kinds of things, and yet Jesus still might be leading you right into the middle of that storm. And he has dominion over all the things that terrify us. Can the Lord handle my need for health care? Yeah, he sure can. Has he told me how he's going to handle that yet? No, he has not. But welcome to following Jesus, right? When fear rises and everything feels out of control, remember that we serve the one who rules over everything. And then I just want to move on to this next part. As we look at Peter, he says, if it's you. So Jesus says, guys, have courage. It's me. I am. It is I. Don't be afraid. Peter's like, if it's really you, command me to come to you. What an interesting request. Command me to come to you. And Jesus says, come. And this, friends, this is crazy. Peter steps out of the boat. I mean, I'm imagining the boat probably doesn't even feel super safe, right? If you've ever been in like stormy water, stormy seas, and the boat's going like all over the place, and wind's in your face, and water's blowing in, and you're kind of like, I hope we make it through this in the boat. And yet Peter's like, well, I'm going to step out of, and Peter steps out of the, like this is, in my mind, it's almost the bigger miracle. He steps out of the boat. He steps out in faith. Here's the third point I want to just point you to. Following Jesus often means leaving the safety of what we know to experience his power in what we can't control. It means leaving the safety of what we know to experience his power in what we can't control. And when Peter's foot hits the water upholds him. That's crazy. I mean, every time that I step into water, I sink. right? Every time I get into the bath, like I've never gotten to the bathtub and just stood on top of it and been like, wow, like it's crazy. No, every time I just go right in. And yet Peter, as he's just stepping out in faith, the water meets his foot and upholds him. And to me, this is just, I don't even fully comprehend all the dynamics that are happening in this moment. But Jesus is the Son of God. And this is why it's such a miracle, because when Jesus walks on water, we're like, well, he's the Son of God. I mean, it's a miracle, but he's Jesus, right? And he healed a bunch of people, and he did all the things, right? It's Jesus. He walks on water. Wow, that's amazing. But Peter's just Peter. And yet Peter gets to experience this incredible moment with Jesus. And in the moment of fear, faith rises. I wonder how many steps he got in, right? Was it like 20? Or was it like 1? I don't know. But he sees the strength of the wind. So he begins to look at all the surroundings like, wow, the waves are like really big out here. And the wind is like, it's coming at us hard, right? And it's like his gaze shifts from Jesus to all the stuff around, and that's when the scripture says he begins to sink. Now, I just want you to remember, like, when you step in the bathtub, you don't begin to sink, you sink, right? So there's like mercy built into this moment where he just begins to sink, and he calls out, Lord, save me. And it says that Jesus grabs him by the arm and lifts him up and puts him back into the boat. And I was just thinking about the dynamics that are happening in the entire encounter. So they see Jesus do all the miracles, right? And faith is high. Like, we just fed 15,000 people with like a meal. Like, that's insane. Faith is high. He's like, get in the boat, go now, leave me alone. And they get out there, and it gets crazy, and fear is rising. And then they see Jesus walking on the water, and they're like, it's scary. And then Peter's like, tell me to come. And he gets out, and like faith is high again, right? So we had fear, and then we had faith again. And then he sees all the stuff going on around, and the wind and the waves, and now he's afraid again, and he begins to sink. And then it's like Jesus, he calls out to Jesus like, save me, faith, like, save me, God. And Jesus saves him, and it's like this alternating movement of faith and fear, faith and fear, and faith and fear. And I just want to say that this is what it means for us, friends, to walk with Jesus. It's to make steps knowing that we're going to step out in faith, and sometimes fear is going to be right behind us. Sometimes fear is out in front of us. And here's what I just want to call us to this morning. Let faith have the last step. Let your faith have the next step. Because when you launch out by faith, you're going to encounter all the feelings. But what's important is that we let faith have the next step. I was thinking about Jesus being right there to catch him, right? It's such a beautiful picture of like Jesus being present there. Now he's in his earthly body, right? He's visible to them. They can see Jesus. He can call out to him, Lord, save me. And Jesus like literally rescues him from danger in that moment. But we know that earthly body that Jesus was in at that moment was crucified on a Roman cross. And that earthly body died. And then 3 days later, that earthly body rose again. And then like 40-ish days later, he ascends to the Father in heaven. And Jesus is now over all things. Like, he's seated at the Father's right hand. And I just want to remind us that Jesus is still catching us by the arm and lifting us up, right? And he's not just confined to one like earthly body in front of Peter, but like over all of us. Like, no matter what you're going through, like the arm of Jesus is able to lift us in the midst of whatever we're facing, whatever fears we might encounter. He's still catching hold of us. So let faith have the next step. So here's what I just want to land us with this morning. What faith step might Jesus be leading you to take? Like, what would it look like for you in your life to launch out by faith? Maybe you're in the middle of it right now. Maybe you've launched out by faith, but now you have all the feels of like, I'm kind of scared of all the stuff that's happening right now. And I just want to encourage you to let faith have the next step. Maybe today it's an obey step. Like maybe Jesus is saying to you, like, I want you to start something new, or I want you to stop doing that old thing. And there's an obedience step for you. Maybe there's a go step, like he wants you to start a new group. He wants you to maybe be a part of missions in the world, or maybe he just wants you to share your faith with your neighbor, your friend, or your coworker. It's a go step. It could be a give step. Like you know that you're being called to give something. Right? You're called to give away something or give money towards something, and there's a give step for you. And it's a faith step, and it's gonna cost you. But you feel like you're led to do it. It could be a relational step. Like that thing happening in that relationship where you have to die to yourself a bit more, or you have to be more vulnerable, or maybe there's some mending that needs to take place, and there's a step for you that's relational. It might be a public step where like your faith needs to be made public. Or I remember being a very young believer and like praying out loud in front of other people. I was like, can I do that, right? But then you do it, and you take that step, and you pray out loud with your group, right? And there's something about that that's powerful. It's a public step. Or maybe it's just simply like you need to trust in Jesus for salvation. But what faith step might Jesus be leading you to take? Friends, don't let fear have the last step. Let faith keep stepping, right? The wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshiped him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The storm will end, and Jesus will remain. Amen. Let's pray together this morning.